Welcome to another great episode of Quantum Action, the podcast that takes you to infinity and beyond. Today, we're going to continue our mastermind discussion with Ben, TJ, and Chris about the book Think and Grow Rich. If you've listened to part one, you'll see that, as well as talking about the principles, we talk about how we've applied them in our lives from different perspectives. All four of us give our take. I'm sure you'll gain value. If you haven't listened to part one, please go over and listen to part one. This is part two of 3 parts. So let's get into today's mastermind discussion on Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. Off we go.
Yeah, that's actually, now that leads us nicely into faith, which is the next concept, which is linked to autosuggestion. So we'll tie these two in together. So, okay, let's say you've done all what you just said, Chris, and you've written down all the things that you need to write down, and now you have to actually believe that you can get there. So faith, how do we start believing? Chris, you continue.
Yeah. I think it kind of grows on what I was saying. You definitely have to give yourself permission. And let's say you've got it. You got the direction. Okay, I want to go here. This is where I'm headed. Well, now you really have to personally believe that. That is super important. And let's say you kind of believe it, but you don't all the way believe it because you're just getting started. This may not be cool with a lot of people. Lie to yourself if you really want to do it. Because if you're coming out of a dark place, you may be very lacking in confidence. You may be very lacking in that kind of motivation. Tell yourself it's going to happen. Simple exercises.
Auto-suggest yourself, basically, you're saying.
Auto-suggest, exactly. Yeah. Write something down. Put it beside your bed. Super simple. Like, I can achieve X goal. And when you wake up, read it and say it. Read it and say it, and just do it. And, you guys know it's not silly. The general population will assume it's silly. It's not silly. It works, right? And that will keep you focused, keep you believing. And then you'll find over time, week 2, week 3, whatever it is, day 5, day 80, day 100, you'll believe. You'll find yourself repeating these things. You'll find yourself motivating other people, right? Mm-hmm. But I find, once again, it's a simple trick. It's not that complicated. Write down one sentence. You have the direction, write down that one sentence. I believe I can do X and I will achieve X. And that's it. Super simple, but repeat it every day. Repeat it every day. Or, you can get more granular and more nuanced depending on how strong your desires are. You can meet people like TJ, Ben, and Fab and have conversations with them that inspire you. But I believe that will happen along the way, and those people will come into your life. And if they're not there now, they're likely not in your life now because you don't attract that kind of person. You have to become that person before you attract that person. So I think that summarizes.
Okay, TJ, you want to talk about, over to you, TJ, and then over to you, Ben. So I'm trying to move us all around here, turns each with things. So TJ, how would you, the faith into the autosuggestion, how would you sort of?
I think faith isn't just about confidence.
Yeah.
Faith is almost a physical thing, pure intelligence. It's a feeling of assurance that this thing you desire, that, as Chris said, even if you didn't have the money right now or the skill right now or the education right now, that deep down you believe you can make it happen. And then the key is start to move on those ideas, even if you chunk them down small. Feedback is huge. When you start taking little actions and you're repeating these things, as Chris said, over and over and over, and it leads you to take this action or notice this over here, and you act on that impression. The key is starting, I think, with faith and acting on those ideas, those impressions is what's going to grow the confidence. It's going to grow the faith as you act on impressions. Because the principles in this book are simple principles. I mean, you're right. It's simple to look at a piece of paper that says, I can do something, I will do something, I am something. But then it's also easy to get distracted. So you've got to do it regularly. I'm all with that.
Sure. Yeah. Ben, how about you? Yeah. Faith and autosuggestion. How do they connect?
Well, I think, as you look at desire being the first step and faith being the second, some people might go, there is a very clear difference between the two.
Yeah.
Desire, I think, starts in your heart, doesn't it? And faith kind of starts to move into your head, right? Mm-hmm. And for me, I've always believed that faith is a principle of action. And what I like about this step here as he leads into the next one of autosuggestion is, interestingly, the first step, the first action in developing faith isn't necessarily a tangible one. It is actually an action of thought, where you're starting now to make decisions to take control of your thoughts and lead them in the right path. And that's intricately linked to your desires. Yeah. So yeah, I think there is wonderful mercy in these beginning steps, or grace, perhaps, if that's the right word, that allows everyone a clear starting point, and a simple starting point. And that is, even if your starting point is you don't believe yet, but you want to, right? You've got a desire there, but your faith isn't strong enough. Just work your desire by starting to link that with your thoughts and start to channel your thoughts in that direction, because thoughts then lead to action, right? That's the next step, right? It kind of moves on from there.
Yeah.
So I think it's huge. It's, faith is a principle of action, but the first step, the first action is starting to govern your thoughts and take clear direction of what way they go.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, go ahead.
One thing,
yeah.
If you think you can, you can. If you think you can't, you could be right? I mean, it's very possible. Why? Because when you think you can't do something, you shut off that part of the brain that could make it happen. You just put a filter on, a block on. Now you don't notice the opportunities around you that aren't even available yet. So you've got to think it right, and that is the beginning of faith, is getting those thoughts right, for sure.
Yeah, one thing that helps me with faith is faith in God, as in, well, if I'm meant to do this, because by divine design, I was placed here to do this, even though with my mind, I haven't got the confidence, I don't know how I'm going to do this, but I have this feeling that this is what I need to do, because the higher power, God, infinite intelligence, however someone wants to call it, there's a connection there. I've been placed here to do this for a reason. And so I will figure it out. But as Ben said, it's action. So how do I take action? Well, you don't need to take massive steps. You just need to take it one step at a time. And they always say, when you've got a massive goal, break it down into small goals, so that now is all I need to do today is to make one step forward. I mean, if you're going to climb Mount Everest, it starts months before. And
this is an interesting point that you raised, for Richie. I know we've got lots of different principles to get through. We may struggle to get through all of them, but this is a really important thing that we're talking about here. When we talk about faith in what? Right. Exactly. Because the auto-suggestion that we've already discussed is really positive affirmation that we can do it. Right. That's really where it's centered, which means the principle of faith is learning to realize that my potential, my worth, my value, my purpose is bigger than what I think it is. And when we can tap into that and realize that our perception, because we've got true faith and you've also got false faith. We can, the challenge with belief is, I can believe in something that is incorrect. I can have an incorrect belief. For example, I might tend to catastrophize or discount the positive experiences in my life, and negatively self-label, be an all or nothing thinker. These are negative beliefs that lead to negative behaviors. But the challenge with faith is being able to look at some of those and undo them. It's hard, because I believe it. It's my tendency, it's my nature to think that way. And so how do I not believe something that I believe? Because those types of beliefs, they squander and squash our sense of identity and purpose and value.
True,
and much of this.
It's about you're right on. And it's just about, you've got to fill your mind with information that leads you closer to your goals, the books, the audios, the podcasts. So whatever you're feeding your mind, this is what's brought up in the book, and every classic writer has written about it, is every thought impulse is then translated into the physical equivalent. So we attract or dispel based on our most dominating thoughts. And that makes me think, when you talk about action, Fab, is what was brought up earlier, the law of the harvest. You reap what you sow. you increase returns, you get more than you sow. But the third one is the tough one. The third one is delayed gratification. And so it could be, because we've already sort of talked about this, there's so much distraction, and because we don't see our results coming instantly, then we think, well, maybe it's not for me, or maybe I don't have the capability. And now
you stop 3 feet from gold. Yeah. And then you will
stop 3 feet from gold. That's
yeah.
correct. But you have to realize the law of the harvest says it's going to take time, and we can't ignore that kind of true principle. So,
but in the meantime, while we're waiting, we can always focus on increasing our specialized knowledge, which is the next point. How important is specialized knowledge in this 13-point system? Ben, over to you this time.
I think it's essential. It's, we've all heard of this kind of mantra or kind of way of thinking of, what's the
10,000 hours to become an expert in something.
Yeah,
10,000 hours to become an expert. Yeah.
Yeah, but I remember I grew up. I was a musician when I was younger. I used to play in jazz bands and what have you. And I remember my music teacher always saying, "Practice doesn't make perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect."
Yeah.
You can practice something very badly and end up developing terrible habits.
Yeah.
Right. You've got to practice right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So perfect practice makes perfect. That's a hard one to kind of wrap your head around. But
can I just add one thing to that, Ben?
Yeah.
Practice makes permanent.
Yeah.
Good or bad. Right.
Yeah. Good. I mean, you see it on the golf course.
Yeah.
You see these people out on the golf course. Because I spend a lot of time on the golf course with my son, who's preparing to be a professional golfer. And you see these guys, and they're out there every day, and they're really, really bad. And my son says to me, "Why don't they just go for a few lessons, Dad?" I said, "That's a good point." Because these guys are practicing year after year after year, and then they go and play against my son, and they get thrashed completely. And they're like, "How did this kid at 19 beat me?" Well, it's because his practice has been, coached and changed and improved and whatever. We've always got to be improving. We can't just go out there and practice. We've got to have a coach. We've got to have somebody looking at us from the outside to see what we're doing right, what we're doing wrong, and what we need to change to in order to get better. And that's really part of the whole process. And it's a process.
Yeah. And that goes back to this, thing that we've said repeatedly already, which is, this is what I love about books. I grew up in an environment that I wasn't surrounded by lots of financially successful or very prosperous or high achieving individuals. There were some, of course, but I didn't necessarily have strong connections to them. I felt like I was on the outside looking in, going, how do I get in there? What's the road through? And the benefit of books is you get experts in all sorts of fields that can become your best friends, and they are there by your side every time you pick the pages up. You pick the book up and turn the pages. And same with podcasts, and same with conversations like this. But we're fortunate that we're in the technological age that makes all information accessible. But the key is to get the best information.
Amen.
It's because amongst everything that you've got out there available, you've got to learn to dissect and to filter and to cut through the chaff and get through to where the nuggets are. But I would say you've got to latch onto that. You've got to be committed to be a master of your trade. There's too much. I think there's too much kind of philosophy now of, focusing on the wanting and then saying I'm entitled to it. Yeah, we're not entitled to anything, right? The earth has been around a lot longer than we have, and it doesn't owe us anything. Right? It's our job to go out there and to make something of ourselves. It's up to us, right? But there's too much of I want it and I'm entitled and therefore I should get it. It's like, no, you've got to earn your stripes and you've got to put the work in, and you've got to learn the skills and develop the knowledge and become a master. Prove yourself. And it's that principle of becoming. In the process of doing that, you start to show up differently to life, and then life starts to present different people as a consequence, because they then get attracted to you.
Yeah, very true. I mean, in my life as a pilot, I remember in my early days, one captain instructor said to me, he said, "You've got to earn the stripes on your uniform on your skin first." So your 4 stripes, which means you're a captain, you need to have those on your skin before they're actually put on top of your shirt.
Yeah.
And so how do you do that? You do that through specialized knowledge by continually improving and working with different people and learning from them and improving yourself every time and being a bit critical of yourself and asking for input and feedback.
And yeah, I'd say one last thing that I'd say on this as well is that one of the benefits of going through that journey is the network that you develop if you're really committed to excellent skill development.
Oh yeah, that's key.
But because and we'll perhaps talk about this later on, is you got sometimes extremes, haven't you? People saying I want it and that's all that I need to have as the desire, and they miss out these steps of action. But then you got others that say, and I used to say this mistakenly, in my arrogant youthfulness, perhaps years ago, when people would say, oh, how have you achieved what you've done? And I used to say, I'm not the smartest person in the world, but I will outwork anyone. And I used to kind of hold on to that as a principle of my success. And I've learned actually that's not independently correct either. It's not just about hard work. It's also about who you know and who knows you.
But there again, when you're
specialized skill,
when you're working away and you're working with different people and they see that you're the type of person that no problem if I make a mistake, I admit it. I'm here to learn. Oh, he's it's like I was flying with some people and then I wouldn't fly with a certain captain for maybe a few months and then I'd fly with them again and they'd see that I'd improved. And that sticks with people and that person is part of your network. And if people see you grow and develop over time, and then you kind of brand yourself in that way, in that person's eye, they know that Ben or TJ or Chris or Fabrizio is somebody that continues improving themselves all the time. They get it. And if they don't get it, they find a way of getting it. You develop that kind of reputation. And as you do that, you develop a network, because the self-made men don't exist. You can't succeed on your own. You're going to need to have a team. And you're going to have to select that team carefully, and they're going to want to be on your team. And so you'll have to be one of those people that if you say to somebody, you want to join my team, they don't think about it twice. They say, yeah, because I've known this guy for 20 years. He's a mover and shaker. If things go wrong, he tries to put them right. If he falls down, he gets up again, all that kind of thing. And Napoleon Hill mentions this in his book. All these people that created the success that they did, Napoleon Hill interviewed, it was all a result of creating teams. You can't do it on your own. You need to have a good team. So the specialized knowledge is not just you. I mean, even Steve Jobs didn't create the iPhone on his own. He had a team of engineers that worked with him. And it's building that team, which helps that specialized knowledge of you, your brand, or whatever. It's a bit like you, Chris, with your software company. I'm sure that you didn't build this thing on your own. You needed specialized knowledge, but you needed other people with specialized knowledge. Chris, tell us a little bit about how you did that.
Yeah, I mean, definitely the team I have at ZipScript is fantastic. I'm absolutely blessed to work with these guys. And when we talk about specialized knowledge, they're extremely specialized. They're back-end software developers. And the business does not operate without them. But to grow on Ben's point, I'm in a little bit of a different position when it comes to specialized knowledge. I have a difficult time speaking about it. Like, I know I have certain skills, but like, I'm the CEO. So a lot of the time at the beginning, I got to push really hard. I'm doing a lot of certain busy work, I would call it, to get the thing off the ground. But now in the position the business in, I have to actually not do so much of the busy work. I have to retrain my brain to say, hey, actually, you need to sit down and think about the next move you're making. And is it the correct move? Do we have the correct resources? Do we have the correct people in the correct positions? And is the execution the right execution? Thinking more high level, more strategic, more stuff like this. I think specialized knowledge is absolutely critical. I think the jack of all trades thing is a little bit of a misnomer as well. And I'd say for me, I think you guys touched on it already in terms of specialized knowledge. I've realized what I am good at in life now, and I double down and triple down on it. And that's networking, that's motivating, and that's team building. There's multiple things, but really it comes down to people. I love people. I know how to talk to people, and I can work with people that, I get along with, or we can convince that this is a great thing we can do together. So I think, specializing, but I think to find your specialized, like what you should specialize in, you need to try a lot of stuff. Like Ben, you mentioned you were a musician, right? If you've done a bunch of different things, I always advocate for this when people are getting started. Try a bunch of things. And if you don't like the thing, that's awesome, because that means you're getting one step closer to finding the thing you do love. So I think it really starts with just try a bunch of stuff. And then if you don't like those things that you keep trying, eventually you'll land on something you like, and then you can double down, triple down, specialize. And you guys talked about this previously as well. It's like, you have to be careful of where you're getting information from. I think that was we're getting more granular and deep, guys. But I think that's really important. I think that's why it's really important to surround yourself with at least one person in your life who challenges you. Like, you need to be challenged, especially if you're, headstrong individuals, which I'm sure all of us on this call are. I really am privileged and blessed to have people in my life where I say, hey, I have this fantastic thing. This thing is going very fantastic. This is the direction. And now I ask them, because I've changed. Ben, you mentioned this as well, where I wouldn't even ask for advice before. Now I invite them to tell me, how terrible is this direction? Please tell me what is horrific about what I'm doing right now. I give them permission to basically SHIT all over whatever my plan is, because then if I can't defend it, to an appropriate level, then I need to rethink it. And I think that's really helped me a lot, is giving people permission to tell me why I'm terrible, or why my idea is terrible, or why my business is terrible, and then trying to defend it, which is fantastic as well. But that comes back down to specialization. And I think that gets into like an onion. There's layers, right? Yeah. And this is getting into peeling multiple layers back. You can get into that. What I'm talking about now is getting very specialized. Because once you're very specialized, then you can focus on becoming the greatest, the best at that thing. And then that's when you keep going with the onion, Specialization is the key for sure. But you got to find it first. To find it, like I said, reiterating once again, try a bunch of stuff.
Yeah. So
TJ, last thing. Don't get, it's okay. Try 10 things, try 20 things. Don't think you have to have the one thing, Just try, go out and try. You want to be a skateboarder? You want to be a golfer? Go out, try it. Give yourself a year. Right. Doesn't work out? Great. Who cares? Try another thing. Yeah.
TJ,
I really like that Chris doubled down on the specialized knowledge. I'm going to be a little contrary here.
Okay, go. We like contrary.
So in life, here's a distraction right now for many people. For 30 years, they've tried to whoever the powers that be have tried to destroy the concept of meritocracy, which flies in the face of specialized knowledge. Okay. There is power, and I'm just agreeing with Napoleon Hill, with Chris, with Ben, with you, Fabrizio, that learning a skill and becoming the best at that skill will open doors for you. And we as a society can't let go of that and think that being 50% is good enough. That's all I would, and there's a whole world out there that's pushing to say 50% is good enough. But if we're really ultimately going to achieve our goals and our dreams, we got to know what they are. We've got to specialize our skills. And then we got to peel, as Chris said, peel that onion back and go deeper and deeper and deeper and forward until you achieve that goal without giving up.
Yeah, but it's interesting because back in Napoleon Hill's time, I'm sure a lot of people made their money on farms, and farming was, everybody grew their own vegetables in their gardens and whatever. Now, a lot of people live in the city. A lot of kids have never even grown something in their garden and then eaten it. So, there's a lot of, what's the word? People aren't connected to nature. They're not connected to natural law as they used to be. And this, I think, technology is not helping, because technology is keeping kids glued to screens and not outside climbing trees, or planting plants or doing stuff outside like they used to do back in Napoleon Hill's time. Things have kind of changed. But going into the next principle, which is imagination, TJ, and you work with a lot of organizations with leadership development and that. How important is imagination in someone's life and in an organization and in a company? Because this is something that's not taught in schools. In school, we're taught to memorize things, and First World War started in 1914, ended in 1918. We tend to we're taught to memorize and answer questions by multiple choice and whatnot. And imagination isn't really something that's encouraged. But imagination is a principle that's so important that Napoleon Hill found when he interviewed these 500 people. Imagination was key. into success. How do you
I
find
think
imagination being such an important element when you're coaching people with leadership and in companies? What do you find?
imagination is everything. The greatest, Mark Victor Hansen said, the greatest nation in the world is the imagination, right? Napoleon Hill called it the workshop of the mind. And I think people are just casual. That's what I think.
Yeah.
But when you're passionate about something, or an organization, to when a leader, and Chris, you sound like a visionary leader by some of those qualities and principles that you've brought up. When a leader will go to the people and say, let's dream together. Let me hear from you your ideas of how we can make this better. I tell you what, when you can make the imagination okay in an organization, recognizing that failures might happen here and there, but I want everybody's ideas. Let's brainstorm together. I tell you what, that's when opportunities and doors will open that you otherwise won't see. So I do think that imagination is the workshop where you take your desire, you take your faith, you take your specialized knowledge, and then you creatively figure out a way to make it tangible in the real world. And
yeah, the organized planning, which is the next point.
Okay, the organized planning, right? And that comes after, if I'm correct. Yeah, organized planning comes after the imagination. So you've got to spend time in that imagination. And I think as you do, you get excited, right? As you do start to take the time out, the 30 minutes out that Chris said, or whatever it is, and you just imagine a future, or you imagine something different for your life, all of a sudden, those strokes of ideas will start to come, but you got to go to a place where you ponder and imagine.
One thing that helps me with imagination, and this is something I've always done, but Elon Musk talks about this a lot. He says, I always make a point of reading some fiction books because fiction allows me to imagine the possibilities of the future.
Right. Yeah.
So when I like science fiction, so I try and read at least one science fiction novel a month, because I mean, you know, flying machines and airplanes and that. So it's kind of my realm. So for me, technology is important, and flying machines and whatnot. So science fiction is showing me, helps me with my imagination. It helps me to sort of think what could be possible for the future, and helps with imagination. So imagination is really, really important. Ben, what are your thoughts on imagination? Have you found it help you in your life?
It's critical. I think it fuels desire.
Yeah.
It fuels faith. It fuels auto-suggestion. It fuels planning. It fuels all the action. It fuels everything. It's really the fuel for all of it. But what I think is interesting is, you know, often when we think of imagination and the role it plays in us crafting our success, we do go to the creative opportunities of building. I want to take a different slant on it, and say, you know, research has shown that our ability to endure hard things and to develop patience is improved when we engage our imagination. Because what it does, when we're dealing with something tough, we're right in the thick of it, and that emotion is strong, and it's hard, and it's challenging. When we can project into a future state and visualize and imagine and create a better outcome, we bring that better outcome in that moment, because it's in our mind, into the present state of where we are. And it gives us the ability to hang on and to exercise patience. And patience is a critical virtue. In patience possess ye your souls.
And in fact, Bob Proctor, what you're just explaining there, Ben, Bob Proctor used to say that's how you increase your frequency.
Yeah.
Because you connect with the emotion of how it's going to feel like when you're actually there and you've achieved it. That emotion increases your frequency, which then gets your mind thinking in a certain way, and starts bringing the ideas, which are the solutions to the problems, which makes things then happen.
Yeah, there was an American gold medal gymnast who was asked after he had won the gold medal, gosh, yeah, how did it feel, you know, standing on that podium, winning the gold medal and taking that prize at the Olympics? And in his response, it was fascinating. He said, it felt great. He says, but you need to understand, I'd felt that thousands of times before, because every time I practiced, I would visualize in my mind that moment and making it happen. He said, so I had lived that moment thousands and thousands of times, in my daily practice. And I think, when the going gets tough, when we're facing adversity, crisis, when things aren't going our way, we engage our imaginations in those moments and visualize that different outcome, and it keeps us going and makes sure that we go that extra 3 feet.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey,
Chris,
hey,
how about you?
Just a quick
Yeah,
story.
go ahead.
I was asked when I wrote If You Think You Can in 2005, the CEO called me and said, would you speak in front of our national convention with 15,000 people there and make your book available? Anyway, I had visualized in my imagination exactly what that was going to be like to be there and walk on stage and everything. And one thing that threw me off, I always noticed this, it kind of burned in my brain, is I imagined it with so much detail. I did not imagine that when I would step on that huge stage, that the stage would be carpeted. And for some reason, that threw me off in the beginning of that speech, that I was walking on carpet on the stage. I didn't expect it. I was so detailed and focused. So, but I've heard that, Ben, I've heard that story before. That's just so amazing to have seen it ahead of time and then to live it later and say, I've been there 1,000 times. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, Chris, how about you with imagination? How has it played into your life?
It's critical, just to grow on that point that Ben had too, because I think it was such a solid point. Yeah, I always say to people now, and it can be interpreted as arrogance, like everything I do now is to be expected. Like I've expected it. It's time. Like I understand. I've done the things. I've been around. I have the high pain threshold. I have the high risk tolerance. I failed. I've done it. So now it just feels like I'm going down, and it's like, okay, hit that milestone. Obviously, let's keep going. What's next? Okay, new milestone. We're going to hit that too. But it all is rooted, I think, and this comes full circle to the foundation I spoke about earlier, which is desire. If you have that foundation of desire, you can let your imagination run wild in terms of how will I get to that desire, right? And Ben, you said it too. It's like, you need imagination in those difficult times, because that's what will pull you out of it, right? When everything's going terrible, you think, I will do this. How will we do this? Give myself permission to dream and whatnot. But to answer the question, imagination is absolutely critical. I think that's gotten me everywhere where I am. And in the business I'm in, I have to come up with ideas out of seemingly thin air, right? Software is extremely competitive. Some of the smartest people in the world are in software, right? You guys know this. And, our business is a business that no one else on planet Earth is currently doing. Currently, to verify a degree in India or Egypt or Dubai, you have to use a call center. We do this automated, digitally, instantly, and globally. And that was all born out of imagination. And to give context, I don't know how to write code. I own a software company and I don't know how to write code. So when I come up with this idea, I know I love computers. I know I love software. I know that software has the ability, more than any other business currently, to reach a substantial amount of people with minimal amounts of capital and minimal amounts of time. If you have a great idea, you can touch the most amount of human beings with software. We just need an internet connection, and so many people are connected. So that, to me, was the foundation. Well, then the next question is, Chris, you don't know how to code. How are you going to create the software? I'll find somebody and I'll explain the idea, I'll explain the vision, and I'll explain it to someone who has that specialized skill set, and see if they think I'm an idiot or if they think there's merit to the idea. Eventually, I find someone that thinks there's merit to the idea. And this is all born out of, and I'll reiterate again, imagination, belief, desire. I know I can do it. I know I can do it. Even if I don't have this skill I mentioned to you guys earlier, if I don't have it, and if it's going to take too long to learn, I'm going to find somebody who has it, and we're going to partner up and we're going to do it together. But it's all rooted in imagination. And to the point TJ made earlier, and Fab, obviously being in the private aviation industry, anytime I get on a plane, I just got back from Vegas and Colorado for some meetings. I'm like moderately upset. I'm flying commercial, like moderately. There's a little bit of anger in my eyes, but then I always get in there and I imagine I say hi to the pilots every time, but I imagine as if they're my pilots. I've hired those pilots. Those are my guys. I imagine if Fab had found me the perfect Gulfstream G550.
He'll be buying a plane from me soon, basically.
Yeah, exactly. So, but it's all these and I imagine it. And then to the point, there's like something really important there is I know, like, and no need to get into details, the struggles, the failures, the negative dollars in the bank accounts, the loans overdue, all this stuff. In those times, I always find myself thinking, what would somebody who's achieved the ability to purchase, a $50 million aircraft for themselves, how would they deal with this situation? Would they get upset? Would they get down? No, their problems are far bigger than mine. I need to figure out how I can overcome this, because if I ever think I am going to own a private aircraft, I cannot let this get me down. I need to think bigger. I need to imagine bigger. I need to be better, be more, be better. That really, the imagination there. And then it's fun. Ben, you said it. It's fun. It makes it exciting again. Last point. TJ, you said this. Give people permission to dream and share. I do this with my team. And the absolute amazingness that this has come into like real tangible takeaways. I know today I have to go run onto a meeting in a minute, and one of my engineers, and there's context to this too, I've told them to give us their ideas. I give them permission. Give me your ideas. I will say to them, your idea is absolutely terrible. This is a horrific idea. No, we are not doing that. But then I always follow it up with, that doesn't mean your next one's not going to be amazing. But I will always be honest with you.
Yeah.
And somebody actually just came up with a amazing idea that has turned around time, efficiencies, costs for us because of that. And it was his first great idea. His first 50 were absolutely horrific, but now he's got the one. So yeah, I mean, giving people the permission to imagine and dream is so critical, but then also don't lie to them. Be honest. If it sucks, it sucks, right? That's fine. Tell them, but then follow it up with, that doesn't mean your next one's not going to be great. Right. So let's just keep trying, keep dreaming. Never stop dreaming.
That was another great discussion with my three friends, Chris, TJ, and Ben. On Think and Grow Rich. Look out for part 3, which will be coming soon. And remember to subscribe to Quantum Action. Lots more content coming soon. And that's all from me, from Fabrizio Poli on Quantum Action. And remember, we're here to take you to infinity and beyond. So keep listening and tuning in.